Hey, everybody. Welcome to Signal 65. I'm president of Signal 65, Ryan Schrout, and I'm joined by some good friends here today. I've got Russ Fellows, who's our VP of Labs, as well as a couple of friends from Lenovo. We're going to talk about AI infrastructure, Lenovo AI, hybrid AI initiatives that are forming, and some of the testing that we've done recently on some of this Lenovo hardware as well. Joining me, I've got Robert Daigle, who is Director of Global AI Business for Lenovo ISG. And then Jim Coleman, who's Director of AI Offerings for Lenovo SSG, different divisions inside the company. Both of you, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us.
So recently, Russ did some testing and published a paper looking at Lenovo a server solution for hybrid AI infrastructure. And we thought we'd have you guys on to kind of talk about what it is Lenovo's doing, how you're kind of evolving your product lines and your services and your software offerings kind of globally across the board with these different infrastructure pieces. I kind of want to start there by defining what Lenovo means by hybrid AI. Hybrid is a term that's kind of been around for a while. You got hybrid cloud and cloud infrastructure and kind of how people merge enterprise and on-prem with different services and solutions. So when you say hybrid AI infrastructure or hybrid something, what is it that you are referring to?
Yeah, so Ryan, I think that's exactly the premise behind using hybrid AI. It's something that people are familiar with, and I think it is exactly what you would think it is. It's about bringing AI to wherever you need it, just like in hybrid IT or hybrid cloud. We're talking about bringing the capabilities to wherever you need it, whether it's in the cloud, in the core, or at the edge. That you have to enable these complex workloads where customers need it most. And it really is predicated by this idea of data gravity. More and more data is being generated outside of a core data center, some of it at the edge, some of it's being stored in the core, some of it is in the cloud. And that we need to bring the AI capabilities, the solutions, and the compute closer to where that data is being generated. So we're getting away from this kind of older idea, of big data where you had to take all your data, all your IoT data and all your other data sources, dump them into a data lake to then be able to drive value from it. We want to make real-time decisions. AI is much more effective when it can make decisions in real time and help us with real-time decision making. And that means that we need to bring AI to wherever you need it. It also saves things like cost of deployment, that you're not duplicating data, that you're not paying for data movement and additional data storage when you're replicating data from edge devices to a cloud, or from the core to the cloud.
Yeah. Now, one of the terminologies that we also have been hearing a lot recently as this kind of these models have changed very, very rapidly, very, very fast kind of adoption of different terms and new implementations, right? We talk about AI factories, and it's not just one piece of it. It's a modular framework, building block components, if you will, for an AI factory. How is Lenovo's kind of GPU server portfolio strategy kind of playing out in that AI factory landscape?
So I'll start with talking about some of the things we're doing at the infrastructure layer, and then I'll hand it over to Jim to talk about how we're building services and solutions on top of it. It really starts with, what you expect from Lenovo's great infrastructure. We're known for making great PCs, making great servers. We lead in reliability. And we have number one market share in PCs. So I think when people think of Lenovo in the context of AI, that's exactly where their mind goes. An AI PC or a GPU-rich server in the data center. But we're doing a lot more in addition to that. But we have platforms where we've taken kind of these best-of-breed building blocks in a modular approach. And I think that's something we've done differently when we think about an AI factory. We take these predefined modular building blocks to eliminate a lot of the confusion. And, we don't want every, AI factory deployment to be a custom, bespoke, unique snowflake. That doesn't really benefit our customers. We want standard modular components that we can support and enable globally. So we have a couple key building blocks from the server perspective, and of course, our factory offerings under our hybrid AI advantage span all the way into workstations for data scientists that are using workstations at their desk. It expands all the way into AI PCs, then all the way up into fully liquid cooled servers for training some of the largest LLMs in the world. So we have a very broad portfolio. We have over 80 AI ready platforms at the infrastructure layer. On top of that, we work with a great ecosystem of software partners, leveraging things like NVIDIA AI Enterprise software. We're also working with a lot of other software, traditional IT software partners to build out AI capabilities and enable AI workloads with like Red Hat and VMware, Nutanix, and others that are building out AI platforms in this space. And then we have an ecosystem called Lenovo AI Innovators, which is really getting into ISVs and applications that have kind of specialized, unique use cases that they target in retail, manufacturing, healthcare, financial services. And we actually have over 60 partners onboarded in that program. And then really bringing all that goodness together, Jim's team developed some of our services and solutions around that. So Jim, I'll let you kind of explain how we bring that together to make up our full hybrid AI advantage.
Thanks, Robert. And so I would start by reiterating, when you're talking about an AI factory, you're talking about the infrastructure, but you're also talking about the software that runs on top of it to build your solution and the services to implement all of that. Lenovo is one of the few handful of companies that can do all of that for you. A lot of times you've got to go and work for someone with the infrastructure, another company for the software, another company for the services. We're one organization that can provide it all. So you've got, one group that works well together. When Robert talks about they've got this great AI infrastructure built and they've got validated designs, we've tested the software on top of that, both our partner software and the partner that we develop ourselves. One of the things that we're doing is we're developing a agent management platform, but to make that a hybrid AI version of it, it has to run in the cloud and on premise and server hardware, and then also where it's applicable on workstations. So being able to have that one common platform that can run across those, and you can bring it close to your data, as Robert said, where you need it, but I don't have to learn 3 or 4 different systems. I've got one solution that can support that, and we build them, and it's very important to us to be able to scale. So we see that, in the AI world today, people stand up environments and they're not really built to grow in the future. We're delivering agentic AI capabilities, not just a one solution, but a capability that can expand over time. So we use load balancing, and you can set up a cluster, put solutions on it if you want to expand it, put another server beside it, extend to it, and grow. Or in the cloud, obviously, it's easy to expand it there. So those are some of the key things in our hybrid AI solutions.
It's very cool. And Russ, I know we did our testing on one of these Lenovo machines, and you were able to put it through some paces and some small language models, some very large language models across a handful of different types of workloads like fine tuning and RAG. I'm curious for your thoughts on how you saw the scalability of the platform, what kind of the enterprise use cases for some of these designs really looked like.
Right. Yeah. So all quite interesting. And some of our research, part of Futurum Group does is looking at what CIOs are looking at. And there's a big demand right now for AI, obviously. So we all know that. But also people are reassessing their cloud workloads. So they're interested in running things in the cloud, but also having a choice for on-premises, like Robert and Jim just said. So having an on-prem option with the Lenovo portfolio was interesting. And we looked at one of the bigger systems, the 5U water-cooled system, which is quite interesting because as we're building out a lab, you understand, well, all of us probably do, that heat, power, and cooling is a big problem. So it's nice to have options. If you have water cooling, that's great. If you don't, they have air-cooled options. So the range of the portfolio is very nice. And then, to your point, we looked at quite a few different LLMs just to get a sense for the scalability and what you could do with just a single 8 GPU system. And it's pretty impressive. You can support potentially thousands of users using some of the smaller LLMs. And if you're running the larger ones like Llama 405B, you can still support hundreds of simultaneous sessions. So it's really a very scalable platform. We did RAG, we did fine tuning, we did inferencing at different sizes. So ran a lot of different workloads and performed very well.
And just worth noting as well for anybody that's watching, if you haven't seen the report, if you go to signal65.com, you can find our research and the writing that Russ did on that as well. It was really interesting to just kind of see, we had access to this one server, showed, GPU scaling 2, 4, 8 GPUs. What do you get out of that? And I think the context that you were able to put it in terms of, based on some minimum threshold of latency, how many users can one of these systems support? It was really compelling way to kind of look at performance outside of just only pure kind of tokens per second maximum throughput.
Right. Yeah, those of us who do a lot of testing, we start talking tokens per second like it's a term everybody should be familiar with. But the more casual Chat GPT users or whatever, Claude or whoever, you don't think in terms of that. You think in terms of what's my response time? Can I get my work done in a reasonable amount of time? Do I have to wait a long time to get my answer back? And so that's the more humanistic.
Very, very good context setting. Yeah. I want to ask also about the kind of the demands on the data center. You kind of mentioned this a little bit, Russ, but to the Lenovo side of this conversation, right? What are those considerations about liquid cooling, rack density, power that really come into these types of solutions or other options in the hybrid AI infrastructure design strategy?
Yeah, I think it really comes back to the type of customer we're supporting and working with, and what their requirements are. We have some customers that do talk in the language of tokens per second and time to first token. And it is about optimizing for those, and especially in the inference and large scale inference deployments. That's a key criteria. I think for most enterprise organizations, they're looking for reasonable response time. What does that mean? It's like, 200 tokens per second is reasonable for most use cases. So there's kind of some reasonable expectations, and we work with customers to really understand, their use cases. Is something that you can do a batch process later, and you don't need that highly responsive, real time, what we consider real time, or do you need it to function in real time? And then we need to look at, time to first token, tokens per second, and that's really our job to translate that customer requirement of saying, we're going to be supporting customers in real time that are going to be using this chatbot that's, leveraging this RAG architecture. So it has to be pretty responsive. Or, this is something that we're doing, back end research that can run overnight and give us the results tomorrow, and that's sufficient for us. And so those are the types of, conversations that we have with customers, and why we have a professional services practice to actually, take them through that whole journey, which Jim will share a little bit more about here in a second. But, when you're looking at, the consideration around rack density, for larger scale deployments, it really comes down to, are you doing training? Are you doing inferencing? Are you doing fine tuning? That allows us to be prescriptive on the right GPUs and understand the models you're working with. Like, if you're working with 405B, which is one of the models that we ran in this test, you're going to need a pretty significant size system to run that, to be able to fit that into the GPU memory. But the reality is, for most enterprise customers, they're working with a 70 billion parameter model, and in some cases, they're working with SLMs, 7 billion parameter or less. And so you can support significantly more users on the same infrastructure when you do that. And you can look at kind of how you can scale that infrastructure down to maybe something that you don't need kind of specialized power and cooling requirements to support. And that's what we're seeing. A lot of enterprise customers really some of them starting with a single node with a couple PCIe GPU cards in it to get started. And they can contain that in their existing data center without having to do any special power and cooling requirements. But the beauty of our portfolio is we can meet customers wherever they're at. So if you need specialized liquid cooling, where we can reduce your power consumption by up to 40% using our fully liquid cooled systems, we can help customers on that journey. Because look, we're working in a kind of unprecedented space with artificial intelligence driving, power demand up significantly. We're still in this kind of exponential curve of innovation, and it's having impacts. Like if you look size of models, and the amount of data that people are working with, all of that's operating on an exponential curve, and it has implications on the infrastructure and the demands around it. And that's why you see some of the large model builders, getting involved with like nuclear power and things like that. But I think, I don't want that to scare the average enterprise customer, because most likely they're going to be starting with smaller models, 70 billion parameter or less, and they'll be able to actually get started, with their POCs and proof of concepts, and even for some of their small production, potentially like a single node with a couple GPU PCIe cards in it. And so we've really built a scalable approach within our hybrid AI factory that we can start small, single node, and scale up to some of the largest clusters in the world with our technology, and provide a lot of efficiency, power savings offerings along the way.
You mentioned something I found really interesting, and I know solutions engineers have been a part of what Lenovo, the infrastructure group, has done for a very long time. But I do feel like there is this resurgence in, we kind of got to a point through the 2000s and the 2010s where everybody kind of knew what infrastructure was supposed to be. You knew what enterprise was, what cloud was, what on-prem was, and you kind of you just went through the motions. And now everybody's got to learn all this over again, right? And kind of like, well, why do I need this? I think to Jim, I'd ask you this, right? Lenovo has built a lot of these horizontal use case examples and proof of concepts that span different industries, content creation and text and audio and video and graphics and everything else. I'm curious, how does that play out for you in terms of how you engage with the customers and kind of showcase to them the benefits of what they can get out of AI technology using Lenovo hardware?
Right. Well, so one of the things that's great for us is, I'll give you an example with one of our solutions. We have a retail digital human assistant. So essentially a kiosk you can walk up to and ask questions about their products, their services, things like that. One of the great things where I was talking about, we have this whole differentiation in size, starting from something small to something large. It's great for me because I've got hardware for the mom and pop shop that just wants one kiosk that they can run, all the way up to using it at like an airport where I've got 50 kiosks and a large server running the whole thing. Well, we've got that whole list. So when we're talking to our clients, one of the great things we've got is we can scale with you. And it's not just scale to start with, it's setting you up so that you can grow. That's one of the key things. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, where we do load balancing, and we use a special type of technology where it's easy to grow that. And I can set up multiple solutions in one environment. And if I want to keep adding to it, in some cases, just can add a couple more GPUs, or if you need to add another server to it and scale past that. So, that is one of the great things about being with Lenovo and having all these different, and it's the top quality across the line and all the different sizes.
And it's something we see as Signal 65 as well, right? Is we get a lot of requests for performance analysis and use case analysis. But even if you look across different domain specific use cases, we've looked at retail, we've looked at legal. How do we showcase using legal data sets to fine-tune models on a weekly basis for kind of national law firms, right? And so there's a ton of different opportunities here. And I imagine it can be pretty overwhelming to try to figure out which ones are you going to go focus on next as Lenovo, right? Knowing you want to talk to everybody, you want to provide an example or a solution to everybody, but you've got to go to where maybe the most interest and most demand is.
Well, one of the things that we do is we have a discovery workshop. So for a client who wants to get started and, hey, look, I know that AI is out there. We know we need to take advantage of it, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe these are a couple of things I want to do. We have a couple-day workshop where we sit down with you. We go over what the capabilities of AI are today. We talk about a couple of the instances that are most common in your industry. We look at what you want to do, and then we'll help you get the set of requirements you need to drive building that solution, right? And so, when we were talking about performance before, it's really not even just like the tokens, but we have three things we look at, right? What's the speed of it response, so your performance, what's the number of tokens it takes or the cost, and then also what's the quality of your answers in like a RAG type solution. And so you've got those three things that you've got to tweak the dials and see, am I getting good enough responses? Is the cost low enough? And is the performance okay for my clients? So helping our clients understand these kind of things and set up, that's where our services come in. We can greatly reduce the amount of time it takes you to get to a viable solution where you can use it internally or even for your customers.
Very cool. So I always like to close on a question that's a little bit more forward looking. It's a little bit more, tell us what the future brings. I'm actually going to start with you, Russ, before I go to our Lenovo friends here and say, as you look into the second half of this year and into 2026, when we look at how we're evaluating performance, how we're evaluating these capabilities, anything stand out to you in terms of things that we should be watching for going forward?
Well, I think, the at the end of the day, it all has to make economic sense. And I don't think there's been a lot of rigor yet to companies implementing AI and then looking back and saying, has this been cost effective? To date, it's all just been competitive, staying ahead of the competitors. Ultimately, it has to make economic sense, and it definitely does. But so there's some work to do there to figure out, the economics of it all. And like Robert and Jim were just saying, there's a lot of trade-offs, right? So performance versus cost versus, the amount of data you have. So there's an endless number of dials you can tweak. So that's one thing. And then I'd also mention agentic, which is way too overused of a buzzword, but when it really becomes implemented, I've witnessed it a little bit. I've already used it slightly, and it's pretty amazing. I got this request from chat that said, hey, I've noticed you got this GitHub project. You've got this open bug. Do you want me to go ahead and try and, fix that and close it for you? Sure, go ahead. And off it went. And an hour later, it's like, okay, here's all the changes. You can review it. It's like, oh, okay. That's getting pretty cool. So there's a lot more of that coming, not just in, programming, but in every domain. So once agents become more real and can do more things, the impact is going to just explode. So that's coming soon.
Robert, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, so I think there's some really interesting things, and kind of building upon what we've been sharing and what Russ just mentioned. A few things. This move towards agentic is going to be really powerful for many organizations, and gives kind of a new starting point. If a company has not started their AI journey yet, it gives them a new starting point when more agentic workflows are available that they can jump in at that point. That was a really powerful thing about generative AI, and when we saw that become popularized in 2023. Is a lot of these tools really were giving companies that had not invested in artificial intelligence kind of a reset on the clock for them to start their AI journey and still be competitive. And I think agentic is going to provide that same paradigm opportunity for many organizations. I really see organizations in three camps right now. You have the ones that have been doing AI for the past 20 years. They've been doing machine learning and advanced statistical models in their business for a long time. And they're kind of upskilling into large language models and learning how they can use LLMs and generative and agentic workflows within their organization. The other, a group that I see are ones that started in 2023 with generative AI and have found some good, and this goes back to what you were saying. We found some good use cases, but haven't proven out the ROI on it yet. Now we run a survey every year with over, I think it's 3,000 CIOs, and ROI was the number one pain point on that survey for this coming up year. Wow, I will say that investment into generative AI is expected to grow significantly, almost 2.5 or over 2.5 times what it was last year. So we're going to see more investment with more scrutiny on that investment into AI. And I think that second camp, the ones that said, "Hey, we did something. We got some agents up and running, some co-pilots up and running last year, but now we've got to really get serious about differentiating and building a solid business case around our AI mission and strategy and investments, and doing it in a responsible way, and just maturing what they're doing in artificial intelligence." And we engage with a lot of customers in this camp through our professional services practice, through Fast Start, our Fast Start program, and through some of our Discover workshops. And then I think the other camp are ones that didn't start in 2023, and then this wave of agentic AI is going to give them another opportunity, another bite at the apple. And what we're seeing right now is that there are some that that are starting today, and they're starting small. They're starting with like a single node, smaller enterprise organizations that are making a modest investment into some infrastructure. And what's interesting about that is we kind of assumed that a lot of that was going to land with the cloud, but there's a lot of use cases out there that demand on-prem deployments, whether it's around data security and sovereignty of data that they want to protect and not push into an API into a public cloud and not really be able to protect that data once it moves outside of their IT environment, or for cost reasons. I mean, we just did a research study where we found you could save up to 50% of cost over some public cloud instances by running your AI workloads on-prem. And in some cases more than that, but 40-50% was pretty average amount. But in some use cases, depending on how long and how many years and how much your utilization is, you could go beyond that. So significant cost savings too by using it on-prem. And then some other use cases are edge-based, and they need to happen in real time. And so you need to run those locally at the edge. So we're seeing some really interesting use cases that are coming out, and some customers that are starting now and starting small and scaling up their solutions. And that's really, really exciting to see that continued innovation. All the LLMs and generative AI solutions that came out in 2023, they weren't just a flash in the pan. That it's continued investment into this space, and that's because people are seeing value in it, and that's why they're willing to double down on their AI investments and strategy.
Agreed. Jim, anything to add on that in terms of the forward-looking perspective?
Yeah, there's two things I think they're going to drive. We hear and I believe that there's going to be this huge uptick in agentic AI down the road. And I think the two things that are going to drive that is, first of all, you're going to see models come out that are very specific for use cases, whether it's risk analysis or optimization of supply chain or something like that. And because they're specific, it's going to drive down the cost, right? So my performance will go up. My responses will be better for that specific use case, and my cost will go down. That's going to drive a significant increase in that. The other thing that's going to make a big difference is there are technologies coming up that are going to allow companies to share information with agents of other companies. So where you saw RAG was a huge thing in our industry, where we could take our own corporate data and be able to query it with the models and get information from it. I'm now going to be able to expand that and get information from other sources as well, which is going to exponentially increase the value of the agents. And I think those two things are going to drive that. And for companies that aren't invested yet, they do definitely need to start looking at it. And for the companies that are, we're happy to talk with them and show them where we believe that's going to go and why we believe it's going to happen.
Very nice. It definitely doesn't feel like anything is slowing down, right? I think we've all three of you have given really good indications of how things are going to be expanding, how our workloads are going to improve, and how the solutions and infrastructure that Lenovo helps build and provide can help support it. I thank all three of you for joining me here to talk today. Russ, Jim, and Robert, really appreciate it. For everybody watching, make sure you go to signal65.com. You can look up the full report that we posted looking at this Lenovo solution as well. And keep checking back on signal65.com for more content and coverage. Thanks, everybody.